An 18-year-old boy climbed onto a boat on the 4th of July. 10 miles of open water stood between him and a barrier island called Horn Island, where thousands of people were about to watch fireworks explode over the Mississippi Sound. He did not drive. He never learned how. Every ride of his life depended on somebody else saying yes. That night, somebody said yes to taking him out to that island. Nobody has ever fully explained who said yes to getting him home. 2 days later, searchers found his body along the shoreline of Horn Island. His name was Nolan Wells. 6 weeks after that, 2 separate autopsies, one paid for by the state of Mississippi, one paid for out of his mother's own pocket because she did not trust the state to tell her the truth, arrived at the exact same word: undetermined. 2 labs, 2 sets of hands, the same boy. And still, nobody can tell his mother how her son died. By the end of this video, you're going to know every confirmed fact in this case, every unanswered question, and exactly where the line sits between what has actually been proven and what is still just a theory. Stay with me, because what happened on that island, and everything that's happened since, does not add up the way anyone wants you to believe it does. If this case has your attention, hit like right now before we go any further. It's the only way this story reaches the people who need to be asking these same questions. And subscribe, because we are staying on this one until it's actually resolved. To understand why this case has become what it is, you have to understand who Nolan Wells actually was, before he became a headline. He lived in a tight-knit coastal community in Mississippi, the kind of place where everybody grew up 2 streets over from everybody else, where the 4th of July isn't just a holiday, it's an institution. Boats, coolers, sunburns, fireworks over the water. For most of the young people in that town, going out to Horn Island on the 4th was as ordinary as prom or homecoming. Nolan didn't drive. That single fact, small as it sounds, shaped his entire life. It meant he needed someone else's car to get to work, someone else's truck to get to a party, someone else's boat to get out to that island. It meant trust wasn't an abstract idea for him. It was a daily necessity. Every single outing required somebody to say, "I'll take you, and I'll bring you back." On July 4th, a group of friends said the first half of that sentence. What happened to the second half is the entire reason this case exists. His mother's name is Christine Wells. In the weeks since her son's death, she has become something no parent should ever have to become: an investigator into her own child's final hours, because the systems that were supposed to do that job for her have moved at a pace she has publicly said she cannot accept. Next week, on the calendar, was supposed to be Nolan's 19th birthday. Instead, she has spent that same stretch of time fighting to get a sealed report released, chasing agencies for updates, and paying for a second autopsy out of pocket because the first one left her with more questions than answers. That is the emotional center of this story. Everything else, the timeline, the phone calls, the interviews, orbits around one mother who still does not know what happened to her son. Here's what we know for certain, confirmed by law enforcement and public statements, no speculation attached. On the evening of July 4th, a group of friends took multiple boats out to Horn Island for the fireworks. Nolan was among them. At some point that evening, as the group began preparing to head back to the mainland, Nolan was separated from the group he arrived with. The exact circumstances of that separation, who he was with, what boat he was supposed to leave on, and what went wrong, have never been fully and consistently explained by any of the young people who were present. By that night, Nolan's mother had not heard from him. What followed was a chaotic scramble across phone calls, group chats, and confrontations between families trying to figure out where he was. Law enforcement was eventually contacted, search efforts began, and on the morning of July 6th, Nolan's body was recovered along the shoreline of Horn Island. That's the skeleton of the case. Everything from here forward is where it gets complicated, because the story the public was initially given and the story that has slowly unraveled since do not match. On day 1, before a cause of death had even been determined, the sheriff's office publicly stated that no foul play had been identified. Sit with that for a second, because the timeline matters here. A medical examiner had not yet completed an autopsy. No forensic conclusion had been reached, and yet a public statement went out ruling out foul play before the science existed to rule anything in or out. Then, in the same investigation, that same office turned around and asked the public to submit any original, unedited photos or video from the island, specifically footage that might show altercations. Two statements, released by the same investigation, that are very difficult to reconcile. If there was truly no reason to suspect foul play, why was law enforcement actively soliciting footage of physical fights on the island that night? This isn't a fringe question. It's the exact contradiction that turned a tragic accident into a case people refuse to stop watching. Since then, the investigation has grown in ways that don't match the language of an open and shut drowning. More than 60 witnesses have reportedly been interviewed. The FBI became involved specifically to assist with digital forensics, meaning phones, messages, deleted content, the kind of technical work that isn't standard procedure for a straightforward accidental drowning. The state's autopsy report was completed at the end of July. As of this recording, it has never been released to the public. The district attorney's office has said the report remains sealed pending review by a grand jury, and that this is standard procedure for any death outside of natural causes in that county. That may well be true. It may be exactly how the system is designed to work. But standard procedure and a grieving mother's need for answers are not the same thing. And it is fair, not cruel, fair, to ask exactly who that procedure is protecting. Because 5 weeks after being handed a sealed envelope with her son's name on it, it was not protecting Christine Wells. Quick reminder before we go further, if you haven't already, tap that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach people who care about accountability in cases like this one. The public first learned most of what it knows about that night from the young people who were with Nolan, primarily 3 friends, who eventually gave a joint, attorney-arranged interview to address what they described as false rumors and online harassment. Their attorney has publicly and repeatedly stated that his clients are innocent of any wrongdoing, that no one has been charged with a crime, and that the family and friends involved are considering legal action against people online who have accused them of causing Nolan's death without evidence. That is their stated position, and no court has found otherwise. It's important to say clearly, nobody in this case has been charged with any crime. At the same time, the public timeline these friends have offered has shifted in ways that are worth laying out plainly, because the shifts themselves, not any accusation of guilt, are what's driven public skepticism. According to Christine Wells, the first she learned that something was wrong was through a location-sharing app, when she noticed her son's phone was not with him. In her account, one of the young men initially told her he knew someone connected to the Coast Guard and would reach out, a different claim than actually placing a call to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard's own initial public statement said they were not notified until around 12:30 that night. The Coast Guard later revised that statement. Neither the family's account nor the Coast Guard's own statements have ever been fully reconciled on the record, and that gap, not any one person's guilt, is what remains genuinely unresolved. There's also the matter of the phone itself. Nolan's phone was recovered by his family, not from Nolan, but from the group of friends, sometime after that night, though the exact timeline of who had it, where it was, and when it was handed over has been described inconsistently across different public interviews. In one account, the phone was said to have been in a vehicle. In another, it was located at a house. These aren't necessarily contradictions with sinister explanations. Memory during a night of chaos and grief is notoriously unreliable, but they are gaps that a sealed, unreleased report could resolve, and it hasn't. What the public record does show is that Christine Wells and members of her family went to more than one location that night trying to get answers and retrieve her son's belongings, and that those encounters were, by multiple accounts, tense. What isn't in the official public record, as far as has been reported, is any documentation of those encounters, which is itself one of the open questions in this case, not evidence of wrongdoing by anyone specific. Here's what matters most in all of this. Confirmed law enforcement statements indicate that when investigators spoke to friends who had traveled to the island with Nolan, they were told Nolan was last seen in the company of a young woman whose identity was not immediately confirmed to authorities. That detail, an unidentified person with Nolan near the end of the night, remains one of the central open threads in this case. It is a documented statement from law enforcement, not an online theory. Because this case went viral, the internet did what it always does when official answers are slow. It started building its own investigation. Independent online creators have released detailed frame-by-frame breakdowns of photos and videos from that day, raising questions about shadows, timestamps, and whether certain images may have been edited or digitally altered. Some have attempted to identify additional people who may have been present on the water that day, but were not named in the Friends' public accounts. To be direct with you, none of those claims have been verified by any law enforcement agency, forensic expert, or court. No official body has confirmed that any photo in this case was altered. No one has been officially identified as an unnamed additional witness through that analysis. These are independent theories, built by members of the public using consumer photo editing tools, and they deserve to be treated as exactly that. Theories, not findings. That doesn't mean they're worthless. Citizen scrutiny has, in other cases, surfaced real inconsistencies that professional investigations later confirmed. But it also means jumping from, "This photo looks strange to me," to, "This proves a cover-up," is a leap this case cannot responsibly make yet. If you've watched other breakdowns online claiming certainty about doctored images or hidden identities, take them as questions worth asking investigators, not as conclusions. What can responsibly be said is this: the gap between an official sealed report and a public hungry for answers is exactly the kind of gap where speculation grows fastest. That's not a flaw in the public. That's what happens every single time transparency is delayed on a case this emotionally significant. There is also a broader question that has followed this case from the beginning, one that deserves to be named honestly rather than danced around: whether race played any role in how quickly, or how slowly, different parts of this investigation moved. That question has been raised publicly, including by members of Nolan's family and their supporters. It has been disputed publicly by attorneys representing the other young people involved, who maintain the case has nothing to do with race. Neither side's position has been confirmed or resolved by any official body. It remains, like much of this case, an open question rather than a settled fact, and it's one only a fully released, transparent investigation can actually answer. Before we move into where this case stands right now, if this breakdown has helped you actually separate fact from theory here, that's exactly what this channel exists to do. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next update on this case drops, because there will be one. As of this recording, here is the complete, confirmed status of the Nolan Wells case. No one has been charged with any crime. The state's autopsy has been completed, but remains sealed, pending grand jury review. A second, independent autopsy commissioned by the family also returned an undetermined cause of death. More than 60 witnesses have been interviewed by investigators. The FBI has assisted with digital forensic work. The identity of the last person confirmed to have been with Nolan on the island has not been publicly resolved. And the attorney representing several of the young people involved has stated publicly, more than once, that his clients are innocent and are considering legal action against people who have accused them online without evidence. Two things can be true at the same time here, and both of them are. It is entirely possible that what happened to Nolan Wells was a tragic accident. A young man, unfamiliar with open water at night, separated from his group in the chaos of a massive holiday crowd, who never made it back. Accidents like that happen on this coastline more often than most people realize. And it is also entirely fair, given an early, no foul play statement issued before an autopsy was complete, a sealed report sitting untouched for over a month, an FBI digital forensics request, and an unidentified person named in law enforcement's own witness statements, to ask why this case has taken on the shape of something far more complicated than a simple accident. Christine Wells has said, in her own words, that all she wants is the truth, whatever that truth turns out to be. Not a theory, not a rumor, not a lawsuit threat traded back and forth online. The actual, documented, official answer to how her son died. She hasn't gotten it yet. Here's what I actually know, stripped of every theory, every frame-by-frame photo breakdown, every online argument. An 18-year-old boy who depended on other people to get him everywhere he went out on the water on the 4th of July and never came home. 2 autopsies came back undetermined. A report sits sealed. A mother is still waiting. I'm not going to tell you what happened to Nolan Wells because the truth is, nobody outside of that investigation actually knows yet. And anyone online telling you they've cracked this case with a brightened photo or a bracelet comparison is telling you more than the evidence currently supports. What I will tell you is this. The case is not closed. The grand jury hasn't spoken. The report hasn't been released. And until someone with the actual authority to do so tells Christine Wells how her son died, the only honest thing left to say is that we don't know yet, and this channel isn't going anywhere until we do. If you want to be here the moment that changes, subscribe. And if this case deserves more attention than it's currently getting, the like button is how that happens. We'll be back the second there's something real to report.